Hey gang, if you've been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you know last year I went all in on saddle hunting and all my saddle gear comes from Tethered. And I wanted to tell you how I made my decision to use Tethered, as I didn't just haphazardly put my faith in their gear. If you know anything about me, I kind of go through a painful process of researching things before I kind of take the plunge. And that was the exact case here whenever I was thinking about moving into saddle hunting. So first for me, weight mattered. The saddle, the Tethered saddle is the lightest around. It weighs in at a whopping 15 ounces. There's also the other benefits of being able to hide behind trees, away from deer, being able to get into trees, in and out of, areas super quiet and super stealthy. And I go through all those benefits with Greg from Tethered and podcast 102. So if you haven't listened to that, you might want to check that out. Second, they thought through literally everything and the full package and accessories for saddle options from years of being DIY saddle hunters themselves. So whether it's platforms, ropes, they just know what will work from years of testing and years of hunting out of saddles. And most importantly, they're here to help. There's a bunch of ways to get into saddle hunting that are somewhat unknown if you've never tried it. And this was the case with me last year, as I didn't know anybody who saddle hunted it and didn't have anyone near me to try a saddle and kind of see if it was something that was a good option for me. So this was me specifically last year. And Tether can help with this, from everything from choosing the right size saddle to how you place your feet for different shooting scenarios while you're in the saddle, and different climbing options. You name it, they can help. If you're interested in getting into saddle hunting or want to learn more, go to tetherednation.com. That's TETHRDNATION.com, and follow them on YouTube. Hello and welcome to the Truths from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 125. Today, John and I are catching up on our summer deer work plans, gear updates, and answering listener questions. So stay tuned. All right. What is happening, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you all are doing good out there. I hope you have a chance to get out and start doing a little bit of deer work. I know the weather has been less than ideal across the Midwest. It's been not great, but here in Pennsylvania, except for this past week, it's actually been pretty good. It seems as though we're starting to dry out, and our friends in the Midwest could definitely use a dry out. So hopefully everything's turning in the right direction and everyone can kind of get started on their deer work, get their plots in. I know a couple buddies of mine out in the Midwest were having some trouble getting their plots in, but of course there's bigger problems in the Midwest with a lot of the flooding and stuff they have that they've had happen and stuff like that. So I guess keeping everything in perspective, making sure that those folks are able to get things back on the up and up, and hopefully they're able to get things back together there, because there was definitely some damage in the Midwest related to the weather we've been having. But for me, this session, John and I are really kind of going over a lot of, what our plans are for the summer, the deer work we're doing, that we're getting into, and so forth. And since we recorded this, I actually had a chance to go out and scout a new piece. As you'll hear as John and I start talking is, I've kind of purposefully kind of went and tried to find a couple new pieces of property, as we all kind of do every year. But me specifically, I'm looking for small pieces, and even more specifically, that might be on the way to my office. That way, maybe I can steal a few extra hunts during the course of the year by being able to slip in the morning before I head to the office, change real quick in my truck, and then head into the office for work. So the spot that I looked at on Saturday was okay. What I'll probably tab that as is probably a quote unquote burner spot. I saw some buck sign in there, but nothing too crazy. It looks like a spot that could possibly be a decent rut spot. But again, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that I'll be in Iowa for the rut. So I'm not sure how much that'll help me here. Maybe late rut, because this part of PA, there's not a break between archery season and gun season. So I might be able to get an extra week in, and that might be where that comes in play to be valuable. But if nothing else, I'm going to use it as a place to hit along my way to work, that we can get a couple extra hunts in. Didn't even hang a camera in there. It wasn't because I didn't see deer sign. It was because I was a little sketch in terms of how comfortable I was with people may or may not be kind of passing through that place just on a kind of walkabout, not necessarily hunting, but just kind of taking a stroll, because there are some homes pretty close by. and just didn't want to take a chance there. So that's what I've been up to. We're not going to belabor this up front a whole lot. Oh, I guess I do want to make mention of a happy Father's Day, because we won't put a podcast out until after Father's Day. So happy Father's Day to all you dads out there. If you are looking for a Father's Day gift, Skull Brew Coffee is doing a 15% discount with the promo code Father's Day 19 at skullbrewcoffee.com. So you can use that and take care of Dad's coffee for the week. But also, before we jump into this podcast, I wanted to make mention of something that's kind of, happening here. And before we kick today's episode off, there's, my buddies at Exodus are doing something really cool. They do this, every year, and I've made mention of this even, I think in the past episode last month, and it's finally time to let you guys know that Velvet Fest is kicking off on June 12th and going to last through July 12th. So if you're not familiar with Velvet Fest, it is the official start to deer season, and Exodus helps get the ball rolling for everyone's summer scouting. So all month, they'll have awesome prizes for people who use the hashtag Velvet Fest on social, showing their whitetail adventures. So this is regardless of whether it's, trail camera photos, or you doing out food plotting or scouting or whatever the case might be. Just hashtag Velvet Fest, add that to your post. Also, if you're in the market for a trail camera, hashtag Velvet Fest will be the perfect opportunity to get ready for this season. Every single camera order comes with a gift ranging from Wicked Handsaws, Skull Brew Coffee, deer aging kit, or Exodus merch. So every single camera order comes with a random prize card also that you'll have to scratch off to reveal a prize. So kind of like lottery style. I've been told it includes some pretty killer deals, so you won't want to miss out. So each week they will have a special offer along with a grand prize. Just as a teaser, here's the grand prize for each week of the Velvet Fest celebration. Week 1, we'll be giving away a Maven rifle scope package, so that's pretty killer for all the gun hunters out there. Week 2, they'll be giving away an Exodus trail camera package. Week 3, they will be giving away a tethered package, which is pretty rad for anyone out there that's thinking about getting into some saddle hunting. And then week 4 will be an Exodus render package. And if you're not sure what the Exodus render is, that is their new cell camera, which should be shipping soon. You'll automatically be entered with any purchase on the website for the grand prize. There's a lot to this campaign, so you'll want to just head over to their website and make sure you get signed up on their newsletter, because you won't want to miss out on these killer opportunities. Also, I'll have the Velvet Fest calendar highlights and all the details. They'll have all that information on their website as well, and that's ExodusOutdoorGear.com. If you're not familiar with Exodus, you've heard me talk about them over and over. I'll give you a quick Cliff Notes version of who they are and why I think they're rad. So they've been on the market for 4 years, and they've consistently showed they build quality trail cameras that flat out just work. I've had some of my cameras in the timber for years without failure. Of course, the best trail camera warranty in the industry, period, as well. So every single camera is backed by a 5-year warranty and even comes with a theft and damage coverage. That's right, you heard that correctly. 5 years, literally half a decade, you'll be covered by Exodus' 5-year warranty. But more than likely, you won't need it because, as I mentioned, the cameras are rock solid and they're built to last. So be sure to take part in the Velvet Fest celebration. Be sure to tag myself, that's at Truth from the Stand, because I want to see what you guys are up to this summer. So be sure to head over to ExodusOutdoorGear.com. Now, without further ado, let's get John on the line. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I am joined by my brother from another mother, Johnny, by God, Utah, hailing from the great state of Iowa, Laplander. What's going on, man?
Yeah. What's up, brother? How are you?
You're down there by that Des Moines. How's the Des Moines?
The Des Moines River.
The Des Moines River. What's going on, man? How you been?
Man, I'm talking like whirlwind. Life has been crazy, moving in every direction, traveling, not sleeping. I'm covering all the bases between work and travels and moving and packing. And my daughter graduated from high school, a couple weeks ago. It's been hectic.
Yeah, dude, it's you're well caffeinated, as we were talking before we started recording. You're all hopped up.
Extremely.
On the juice.
So if I talk fast during the podcast, I'm sorry.
Right. Nice. Yeah, man. You've been a busy dude, man. You've got a lot. You got a lot going on. It seems like this happens every time of year, though, man. Like every year, like we get through hunting season, it's like I'm always kind of I don't want to say stressed out, but like hunting season, there's a lot going on, right? Because, as we always
Oh
say,
yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
we're working dudes, so I do a lot of hunting on the weekends, of course, right? In Pennsylvania, hopefully it changes, but just Saturday hunting. So it's like I'm always out Saturdays hunting, which is like the one day a week that I have time to like do things around the house and take care of, the responsibilities that you don't get to during the week and stuff. And so I'm usually
yep,
slightly stressed during that time of the year. And then I get done with, with that, you get through the holidays and stuff. And it's always kind of like a nice little reprieve where it's like, okay, cool. Hunting season's gone. So it's like, I don't have to prioritize getting in the timber. I can kind of take care of like my personal stuff. And then you kind of get used to that like flow for like a minute where it's like, when you have time to address hunting stuff, you do. It's still important, but it's, it's not front of mind necessarily. And
sure.
then you hit this time of year where it's like turkey season wraps up and then it's like, holy shit, it's June. It's like full go deer work, get your shit together, get your cams out, food plots, make sure you're shooting your bow
Oh yeah.
enough, changing your gear, making sure your gear's ready for the year, strategizing, and it's like, I always forget how I almost feel like this time of year might be more stressful than a hunting season for me. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, during the hunting season, let's face it, the stressful part is just you're getting up early and you might not be getting your sleep in, and but for the most part, like for a lot of people, your pack is all crammed full with all the gadgets and gadgets that you're going to take into the timber, and you pretty much have your game plan set, and it's just a matter of going out and doing it. And to me, it never seems as hectic because, like in turkey season, you go and you sit, and so you're really not running around and do anything too crazy. But yeah, as soon as the season ends, I'm like you. I'm like, well, all right, now we get a little bit of a lull for a little while, But no, it seems like every year there's more food plots to do. There's more trail cameras to run, and you're always looking for new ground. You're always wanting to scout, never settle, which is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
So you're always looking for new stuff, and I'm like you. This is always my wife. She kind of looks at it like, well, if it's not hunting season, then I can add to the honeydew list.
Yep.
So I'm trying to earn brownie points for the fall now.
Yep.
So I'm doing these honeydew lists, and for us this year, it's moving is one of the big tasks at hand. So you're doing that, but I'm going, man, but I need to get this food plot in, and oh yeah, I still got to make money and earn a living. So, oh yeah, I think it's actually more hectic in the so-called off season than during the hunting season.
Yeah, I agree with that. And part of it is like, at least for my day job, it's, in marketing or whatever, but when you build the strategy, that's kind of it's the hard part, but it's the part that takes like a lot of thoughtfulness, right? So it's a lot of thinking, analyzing, stressing, reevaluating, like those types of things. And for me, that's this time of year for hunting season where it's like, I'm not out executing the plan, but I sure as hell could screw myself really badly this time of year by not making the right plans, so to speak. You know what I mean? So in that way, it's almost more stressful because once you get to the execution phase, it's like of course you're like reading sign, and you're trying to work hot sign, and you're trying to be mindful and make plays as you kind of go. But you usually kind of lay out a course, right? It's like you've scouted the properties you want to scout. You started formulating a plan. You started figuring out what your access is going to be. All those things that when it comes time to hunting season, you're just kind of like, start to put the full frontal assault on, so to speak. So, but speaking of deer work, man, what have you been doing in the deer woods lately?
I've got a couple of mineral sites going on the lease down the road, and got some cameras on them. They're starting to get some good activity. They're
Nice.
pounding it, so that's good. And I've got that 2-acre food plot over there on that lease.
Mm.
And anybody who's was looking at any form of news saw the torrential rains and the flooding and stuff that we had, in the Midwest, and it rained. I'm going to say it rained every day for about 3 weeks. We might have had one day of sunshine in the middle, but then the next day we'd get caught back up because we'd get like 3.5 inches, overnight.
Jeez.
But my road in front of the house was 5 foot underwater. And fortunately, my house sits upon a hill, so we were fine. But it took forever for that plot to dry out. And I was getting ready to go on a road trip to go do some photo work, and I had one day that I could get this plot in. So we finally got the plot tilled up. I feel so bad. I had some buddies of mine that were helping me, and they brought over a tractor, and they got about halfway through the plot, and they spun the yoke, the universal joint out of the yoke, and so they had to take that tractor out of there and that tiller, then come back with a different tractor and a different tiller, but we ended up working well past dark.
Yeah.
And actually ended up broadcasting some beans and packing in the dark.
Nice. As long as I've known you, there's been multiple times where you've been planting, broadcasting, and finishing up in the dark. I think this might be 2 years in a row this has happened to you.
Yeah. It's one of those things, and you try to cram as much as you can into one day. And is it Murphy? Is it Murphy's law?
That's
like
it.
If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. Is that right?
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, it just never fails. But then this time of year, the days are getting a little longer. But at the same time, when the sun starts to go down, you're like, okay, sun's just now going down, we're good. And then 30 minutes later, it's pitch black, and you're like, oh crap.
Yeah.
So turn the headlights on and keep on trucking. But because this was on Sunday, and I knew that I was leaving at like 7 a.m. on Monday morning. And if I didn't get it done then, I knew I was going to be gone throughout the week. And then when I got home, like I got home at 4:30 a.m. today, and this is the day before house closing. So I knew I was going to be stuck doing some final packing and that kind of stuff. But I'm like, if I don't get the plot in today, like it's probably going to be like mid to late June before I get another window to get this in. So
right.
We got it in. I like doing the broadcast method. If you don't have that, sure, a drill is ideal, but I've had very good success with getting a good seed bed with a tiller and doing the broadcast method. Just, you need to go a little bit heavy. I shoot for about 125% of what I normally would plant. So this plot is like 1.8 acres. So instead of 50 pounds per acre, I went 100 pounds for the full 1.8 acres. And then I went very, very thin in the center of the plot because I actually did a strip about 20 yards wide of corn, of Roundup Ready corn in the middle of this plot. So that's what we're trying. That's my plan, is to do beans and corn in the same plot. I'll actually have some beans in the corn. And it's a little late on corn. I realize that. But I also have full intention of broadcasting some bean, or the Real World's Deadly Dozen. Yeah. So that's the combo mix of collards and turnips and rape and everything in there. So I'm going to do that later on at the end of summer. But should be an awesome food plot.
Nice, man. Yeah, because I think last year, you actually even had your boys out with headlamps on helping you wrap up, if I'm not mistaken.
I did.
Boys, grab your headlamps. Dad's got to get the seat in.
Yeah. Yeah, I had the boys wearing headlamps, and I was in the side-by-side with the headlights on. And one of the boys was driving me, and I was sitting on the back of the side-by-side, had the tailgate down, and I was broadcasting as he was driving.
Nice. It's a family affair, man. It's a family affair.
Dude, we brought Kentucky to Iowa.
That's what I'm saying,
That's all
man.
I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying. You're fitting in down there along down there on the Des Moines. Fitting in.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, you had better luck with your plot than I did, man, because mine was pretty bad as far as getting it in. Cause
you said you're trying to get equipment down there, and then with the rain and timing just kind of messed you up.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is like the old man lives, in the Carolinas, and so he has limited time to come up, and so he was up, over the Memorial Day weekend, and we have a side-by-side with like basically a disc on the back of it, and last year when I planted the fall plot, I killed it off first, and we spun it up, and it took a little work, but it got done, and it was good to go. This year, I went in the winter, did some fertilizing and liming, and then threw some clover on it, just to see if it would come up and see if there would be anything there for spring green up. And sure enough, it came up like gangbusters. And then he went in to try to, disc it up, and I didn't kill anything off this year because we were using, Don's soybeans, and they're, glyphosate safe. So I was like, cool. I was like, one less step. We'll just till it up. We'll plant it, get it broadcasted. Then I'll go back, a month or so later, however long later, when it gets to be about 6 inches, and I'll go over it and spray it all and kill off all the weeds. And he got up there and tried to till it up, and it's just like the equipment just isn't enough to till up some live foliage. Just wasn't gonna happen. So plan B was to just let the clover there and probably go in the fall with some oats and throw some grain in it as a like a, I guess, a cover crop, if you will, and then that can come up over the winter, and then we'll probably knock that down next year. I'm going to try possibly using the more, quote unquote, organic kind of buffalo method is what I'd like to do. But I think the silver lining here is that the old man kind of recognized that probably isn't the best solution and the best way to use that small field that we have. So we're actually have a larger field that he was like, why don't we just use that? It's on top of the property, and we'll actually get a crimper, crimp that. And that one's actually probably closer to like 1.5 acres, maybe 2 acres. And so I think we're going to plant beans on top up there next year. And so we're going to basically take this year to reset. He needs to get a tractor because he's got some work to do down there. So he's like, I'm going to get a tractor this year. And, and then we'll actually have the equipment that we need to get stuff done. Then we'll actually probably be able to do rent a no-till from the co-op in our county and actually go in and no-till it, which will be nice. So, So this year, I think I'm just going to ride dirty this year with just leaving the clover as it is, and then probably just doing an overseed in the late summer. And so there's something there for the winter, and then let it go. But it's like, I think about this though, man. It's like I do all this stuff down there, and it's like I don't get back very often. And then this year I'm coming out to see you, so I'm literally probably going to hunt that property. Like if I get 2 hunts on that property, that'll be probably the max this year. So
yeah, I mean, between Ohio and Iowa, I mean, a lot of your fall's kind of consumed. I mean, that's a solid 3 weeks between those two properties alone.
Yeah.
2 locations.
Yeah, exactly. And then I've got, speaking of like burning it at both ends, you were saying, earlier just about, trying to find more property and scouting the new properties and always trying to have, additional plans to make moves to.
You can spread yourself too thin.
Yeah. And so I got this buddy. It's a blessing and a curse. There's a fellow by the name of Jesse. He's good friends with Chad Sylvester. He used to live around where I live, and he, got a hold of Chad and was like, hey, I used to live down by your buddy Clint. He lives in Ohio now. He's like, I got some really good spots where I killed some really good deer and had seen some really good deer. I'd like to get a hold of him and maybe turn him on to some spots or whatever. And so Chad was like, give him a call, And so he and I have been texting, and he's turned me on to like 3 or 4 new spots that I've gone and scouted that look freaking awesome for Pennsylvania. You know what I mean? Like where he's seen some legit, good deer. And when I got in there and looked at some sign, it's like I could see, yes, there's some legit good deer here. So, I think this year there's 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4, 5 actually. There's 5 new pieces that I have on top of what I had here last year. So I think I have 6 pieces to hunt just around my house now. So I've been spending time trying to scout those. So I'm doing exactly what you're saying, which is like I'm starting to spread myself a little thin. And I was thinking that this past week I probably need to start prioritizing where I'm going to aggregate cameras and try to pick the best spots. So
yeah.
So speaking of
and I've been in that situation.
Go ahead.
Spread myself amongst different states and different properties, and it seems like it forces that cat and mouse situation. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
You're hunting in Ohio, and I do a card pull, and I'm like, if I wouldn't have gone to Ohio that day, I would have had that deer came right underneath my tree stand, back in Kentucky, and
right.
So it can happen.
Yeah, my other buddy not trying to convince me, but he invited me to Kentucky actually to hunt with him. Josh Profit, actually, I don't know if you ever ran. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's good people. I talked to him a little bit about possibly hunting with him, and I just don't know. Don't know if it's gonna be in the cards this year because I would love to go down, but it's one of those things where it's like it'd be an early season hunt, probably September, and I'm like, man, Iowa for 2 weeks. Am gonna try to slide out to Ohio for at least a couple days, maybe. You know what I mean, like a long weekend. And then if I tried to slip Kentucky in there too and hunt around my house, I was like, I might have to come live with you after this season is what it is.
Yeah.
Actually, when I came out to Iowa to hunt, I'd probably just bring all my stuff and just move in. at that point. I don't think the wife would take you back. So,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, and it's funny because looking at this year as a whole, when the year started, and it's probably on one of the earlier podcasts that we did at the start of the year, I was like, yeah, I think I'm just going to hunt Iowa. That's all I'm going to do is just focus on Iowa this year and not really doing any traveling, nothing west, and this year's starting to fill up. Just in the last little bit. I've got a Canada bear hunt that's going to happen in August. There's a very, very strong possibility of a Colorado archery October mule deer hunt.
Nice.
And on my recent travel, the place I was at yesterday, I was in Southern Ohio, and good buddy of mine, Tevis McCauley from Whitetail Heaven Outfitters, said, "Hey, why don't you hunt in Southern Ohio, right in the Peoples area?" Which you remember Donnie Wilson?
Yeah.
Donnie, the place he used to guide, they're Real McCoy Outfitters and Whitetail Heaven. They have property. Their properties basically butt up to each other almost. Okay. So it's right there in that same area where Donnie was guiding hunts and stuff. So he's like, "Hey, I think you ought to come to Ohio and hunt with us this year." So there's no telling what's going to happen this fall.
I know, right? It's
could be another season. I go travel all over the place and don't kill much. But.
Right. Well, let's hope that turns out differently than that. I'm just hoping. Fingers are crossed that I as long as I draw my Iowa tag, I won't care about much else. You know what I mean? As far as like where else I get to go hunt, like, of course I'll be in PA, but I'd like to get.
Well, I mean, that's going to be the premier hunt because you're coming to hunt and hang out with me.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I mean, I'd probably be more disappointed I didn't draw my Iowa tag because I don't get to come see you versus the hunting.
Yeah, I mean, if you even bring your bow, I mean, that's the secondary.
Yeah, I'll probably just leave that at home. I mean, I'll take a flight instead, instead of drive. But yeah, as long as I get that,
no, it'll be a good time, man. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing you, head out and scout out some pieces and, do your thing. And I'm also looking forward to us jumping in the tree together. I mean, this will be the first season of my life, of my whole hunting life, that I don't have a day job necessarily. Like I don't have a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to have the flexibility to hunt. I don't know. It might be kind of weird. You know what I mean? Weird. Like I might have an abundance of time where I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Well, now it's like that whole thing that we talk about during the season, we lament, or that we've lamented in the past, which is like, I would love to get out today because today was the perfect weather day, but I got X, Y, and Z that I got to get done. I've got this meeting, and it's like, of course the meetings are happening like from noon to 4:30, you know what I mean? Or whatever it is, where it's like, you can't get out for the evening or whatever the case is. And that's always been kind of, that's the challenge with, having the normal 9 to 5er is that, I can take a day off next week if I want to, right? But it's like, is that going to be the right day to take off? I don't know.
Right. Right.
That's the whole, that's the whole bitch of it. It's,
you pick a day, you're like, all right, I'm going to take off Wednesday and Thursday next week, and I'm going to hunt both those days and be stress-free and just hang out in a tree and just enjoy myself. And then Wednesday, Thursday rolls around the next week, and it's pouring down rain.
Yeah, exactly. And you got off from work, so you're like, well, looks like I'm hunting anyway, which isn't terrible to hunt
what are you going to do,
but I definitely don't like to hunt in pouring down rain. I don't mind a little bit of rain, but I definitely don't want to sit in a soaker,
Here's the deal. There's guys are going to, people are like, oh man, I don't care. 50-mile-an-hour winds, 2 inches of rain an hour. It don't matter. Biggest buck in my life I ever saw was in the rain. I'm going to tell you right now, I do not like to hunt in the rain. If it's raining, but I know that it's a good day, or it's a day that I have free and I'm not working, I'm sitting in a blind.
Right.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's the one thing. Like for me, it's like I don't like to hunt whenever it's gnarly rain. You know what I mean? Like that's the one time that I don't really like to hunt. A little bit of rain, like if it's spitting, you know what I mean? A little bit of,
Oh yeah, a little drizzle.
yeah, a little
Yeah.
drizzle.
I'll tough that out.
Yeah, I'll power through that. Like if it's just going to be like a deluge all day, where it's just going to be a soaker all day, I'm kind of with you. Where it's like I'm not real into it unless it's going to clear up, right? Like if I see that there's going to be a pocket.
Oh, I love being out there as soon as it stops raining.
Yeah,
sure.
It's like I'll go in and get wet, you know what I mean, and sit there for 2 hours. So I'm in my tree. It rains after I've walked in, so my ground scent's washed away. You know what I mean, like everything. And I'll sit and get wet for like,
oh yeah, it's ideal.
Yeah, 2 hours or so to know that like, hey man, it's going to stop at like 1 o'clock, and then I'm going to have an afternoon of like perfect weather. The wind's going to be right. The scent's going to be, all the scent's going to be washed out. It's going to be like nothing ever happened in that spot. Now we'll do that, but I've been that idiot in the past where it's like I literally the one year sat in we had an East Coast hurricane or a northeast coast hurricane during hunting season the one year, and like we had some pretty bad winds, you know, at our family property, so pretty far inland, right? So it wasn't like typical hurricane type winds necessarily, but you know we had 30-mile-per-hour plus winds, and I sat in a tree in driving rain all day. And that was the last time I did it. I was like, yeah, that was pretty dumb. I was like, I didn't see a damn deer, but it was like, you know, it was like the second weekend of it. And, you know, I was like, I just want to go deer hunt. I don't care. And so I just got into the tree and I sat there all day, and it was the worst hunt of my life. And so that was the last time. It was the last time I've
But
done
you
it.
came home and you're like, loved every minute of it.
Oh yeah. Well, because it was kind of funny because it was back home, of course. And so it was with some of the old timers that I sometimes hunt with down at the camp or whatever. And so they were just like, boy, I can't believe you sat out in that all day. You know, and I'm like, why is that? And they're like, you're one tough SOB. So I earned some stripes with the old timers, you know what I mean, for sitting out in the crap weather. But they also were kind of looking at me like, you're an idiot. You know, so
yeah,
it was a little bit of both. But
and I've heard those stories. Like, you know, I've had buddies that, you know, they claim the biggest buck they ever saw in their life was on a rainy day, or the biggest buck they ever saw was on a really high wind day.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. But there was also 99 other times that they didn't see a single deer on those extremely windy or extremely rainy days.
Yeah,
so
I mean, I think
the 1% odds that's just not enough for me to go sit out there and be miserable, you know?
Right. And I also think
ruin, you know, $5,000 worth of camera gear.
Right.
You know,
you have a whole different kind of scenario that you're dealing with there too. But I think it also depends on what time of year though. You know what I mean? Because like, you know, thinking about talking with Don Higgins, you know, it's like, and I know for him late season, it's like he wants the crappiest weather he can possibly get. Give me high wind, give me rain, give me snow, give me blisteringly cold. That's the day I want to be out in the stand. You know? Yeah. And so for me, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. I don't know, like October 17th, if that still works. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know. And I'm not saying it to be a smart ass, like I know something someone else doesn't or whatever. I legitimately just don't know.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, and I think also it comes into play if it's really, really cold and really nasty weather the first day, okay, maybe I don't sit.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's been really, really crappy weather for 3 or 4 days,
mm-hmm.
and you know, then it becomes a situation where I say, all right, I know the deer eventually, I mean, they're going to have to start coming to food, or there's a certain source where I know they're going to have to start moving to and going to, then sure, then I'm a little more apt to you know, to tough it out.
Right. Or, you know, where there's a piece of high ground. If it's like, you know, if you're in a swampy area, if you know there's like a specific area that's going to stay dry no matter what.
Yeah. That area's flooding out, then I'm like, okay. Because, I mean, let's face it, that's what it all comes down to is, you know, you're trying to go where they are, and if you're hunting a piece that's 300 acres and you know, well, there's a 100-acre swamp on there, okay. I just eliminated 33% of where they're going to be.
Yep.
My odds have just improved if I go to the high ground. So there are circumstances that'll change that. But as a blanket rule, I'm not much for the just torrential downpour sits. I don't like that.
I've also found it I've also found it more challenging just in the sense of like, you know, when I hunted predominantly out of a stand, it's like I had a pretty slick tree umbrella that I like to use that was small enough, but it would keep me out of the rain, which was, and I could tolerate it. You know what I mean? It was serviceable.
Yeah.
And now in a saddle, because of the way I'm kind of set up, leaning back, it's like I tried to use that same umbrella with my saddle set up, and I just basically got wet. So that I haven't quite figured out what my solution is, because I mean the honest truth is like I don't like wearing rain gear whenever I'm set up. Like I don't mind wearing it in, like to hike in, or hike out or whatever, to stay dry while I'm getting in. But usually what I want to do is I want to basically take it off and stuff it in my pack, or I literally want to take it and like stuff it underneath something or at the base of my tree, which maybe not might be the best idea, because there's scent on it or whatever. But my idea is that the rain is basically washing me clean as I'm walking in. Hopefully my rain gear too. I'm sure someone probably has an opinion on that, but I don't like to wear rain gear whenever I'm set up to hunt. I just don't. I like to have as little crap on me as I can kind of manage, as few clothes as I can possibly manage, and stay warm and stay dry. So I have to figure out what my setup is going to be for the saddle for that, because I haven't figured that Rubik's Cube out yet, but to be continued, I guess.
Right.
But I know we're, in the throes of, cam season, right? So we're now, as our boys, Chad and those guys are just camera folks in general. We're on that Velvet Fest trip now.
Yep.
So how is your cam deployment going? Have you got all your cams out? You putting them out now? You waiting a little bit longer? What's your deal?
I'm waiting a little bit right now. I just put a couple of cameras out on some mineral. That's all I've got out right now. I've got 2 on my lease, and I have 2 over on my buddy Randy from Beetlejuice. 2 over on his big farm on some mineral sites over there. And normally I would have at least 2 more on my home property. And since I'm selling my home property, there's no need to deploy those cameras right now. Now that I've got my plot in, I'll probably throw a couple more cameras up on the plot once it starts germinating, and then I'll start going through my normal trail camera placement in some of my bottoms, some of the draws. But at the end of June is when I'm going to head into Shimmick and start hanging a bunch of cameras in the public land. I've kind of set that as that's my window where I want to start getting out there and playing a little bit, Right. I got more travels, and I got to get past this move first.
Right. And of course, I have vested interest in what you're going to see on those cameras and on the public, of course.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, it's like, just truth be told, in full transparency to everyone out there listening, it's like John and I were talking on the phone, whatever it was, 3 days ago, quickly while you were driving and I was driving, I think. So, because we only talk on the phone when we're driving. And I was like, we're talking, and I was like, how do I bring this up and not sound like an asshole? And I was like, hey, so when you going to put some cameras out on that public?
You need me to
send you
tell
some?
Everybody, Clint's like, so do you need any extra cameras? And I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't know. I was looking in the box the other day, and I think I don't know, 24 cameras, trail cameras or something like that. And I'm like, and without putting a bunch of cameras on my home property, I'm going to have a lot extra as well to put out on the public. Clint's like, are you going to hang in some trail cameras like on this property and this property? And are you going to go over to this public? And
I basically stopped.
I'll do the best I can.
I basically stopped short of like sending
Clint's
you GPS.
Trying to get me to go hang trail cameras on all the places he wants to hunt all over Iowa this year.
Totally. I basically stopped short of like sending you GPS coordinates of like, hey, remember when we dropped this pin here?
I sent you a bunch of GPS coordinates. If you can go hang cameras and then check them every 3 weeks, that'd be awesome. Right. And upload everything that you get from there.
Well, I did. So I did. If you remember, I don't remember how long ago it was. Maybe 2 months ago. I was like, hey, Have you ever used that software? And I'll just give them a plug. This guy John Livingston's an awesome dude. He owns the company Deer Lab, and I've used the software before to aggregate pictures. And so, I have an account with them that I can kind of track multiple properties with multiple camera locations and so on and so forth. And I called you. We were talking a couple months ago, and I was like, "Hey, have you ever used Deer Lab?" And you were like, "Yeah, I've seen it before. I think I've used it in the past." And I was like, "Yeah, it does all this stuff, blah 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 blah." And I was like, "Hey, for all the stuff in Iowa, I was like, we can just have an Iowa like part of the account where we can map all the cameras. I'm like, that way I can see all the pictures." So yeah, it wasn't. I wasn't very smooth about it. So.
No. Hey, and that is cool technology.
Yeah.
I dig it. I actually really would like to start using that stuff. There's some really good benefits to it, without a doubt, and especially on the public stuff.
Yeah.
My problem is, there's always a couple of cameras that I run almost year round, but on public I move the cameras a whole lot. Okay. It's so vast, it's so big. It seems like I'm always moving stuff around, there.
Right. When do you start moving your cameras? I mean, is it basically, do you wait till they go hard horned, or are you still moving them even when you're doing just inventory?
Well, if I deploy something and I'm seeing good activity or a good buck, then I might not move that camera. But if I've had that camera soaking for a month and there's just nothing on it, outside of getting that gut feeling like I just know this is a rut draw,
right,
then I might leave it. But if it's not a rut draw to begin with, then yeah, I'll go ahead and just abandon ship and move it,
Right. Yeah, the technology is cool. If people out there haven't checked it out, you should totally go check it out. It's pretty rad. I will say this, it's like I used it very early, I think very early in their life cycle, and it was good then. But I think I got too enamored with it because I am a little bit of a data geek, and so I think I started putting too much credence into what it was telling me versus just letting it be a piece of the puzzle. And so
Yep.
I think now, I used it. I didn't use it at all. No, I did. I didn't use it last year. I did use it the year before because Chad and I were using it for the one property in Ohio. I didn't use it last year, and I felt like, a year away from it, I kind of now understand like how it's gonna help me versus being kind of how I'm making my decisions. It's just going to be part of it. Because you can get a little overwhelmed with the amount of information that's in there, right? Because I mean, it pulls everything from your camera image, right, from a weather station nearby.
Mm-hmm.
So you get everything from like pressure to wind speed to moon phase to, a heat map that literally will show you where a specific buck is showing up continuously. So you can kind of triangulate like where he might be bedding based on where you're catching him and what time of day or night you're catching him. And I think they even upped the ante, and I'm not sure if it came out yet, but I think they're going to have some type of like AI recognition to where like once you load a buck, it'll be able to pick up some type of feature from that buck as long as the picture's of a certain quality, I guess. And it'll be able to kind of figure out when you upload another picture of that buck, it will recognize that that's him, which is interesting.
Wow, freaky stuff.
Yeah, man. So it's some next level stuff, It's like, and I'm not sure when that's coming out. I know John mentioned that was, I think, on the horizon for this hunting season. I honestly haven't logged back in probably like 2 months or so because I haven't had any trail camera pictures, of course, to load. But the other good thing it does too is it archives everything. So you have deer in there that you can keep year over year, keep tabs on them. And then when they're dead, I think you can, or when they disappear, you can mark them gone, and kind of archive it.
Oh, there you go. That's cool.
Yeah. So it's pretty slick. But yeah, for me, I started going out to all these different public pieces and hanging cameras. I scouted a brand new piece last week, and actually jumped a buck. So 2 new pieces that I've scouted in the past, I guess, month. I jumped a buck and found a bed on both of them. So that's a good sign. Pretty stoked about that.
Some data I would like to get. What percentage of bucks in the 3 to say 6 year class, and it might have to be like 3 to 4 year olds and then 5 to 6 year olds. What percentage of bucks end up hanging out, October and November in the same areas that they hung out June, July, August, September?
Yeah, that would be interesting. I mean, I'm sure someone like, well, I think you would have to put some parameters around what in the same area means during that time of year, only because I know I went to a seminar, and this was a couple years ago now, where some biologists, deer biologists from Penn State, from Pennsylvania State University, who has a pretty big wildlife biology program there, and they do a ton of research. They're kind of, I think they're kind of part and parcel to like MSU Deer Lab folks. It's kind of like the same caliber. Um, and they did a presentation at this seminar basically on buck travel, and as like the season goes, what their travel looks like. And so the net of it was that they all expand their range to some degree for the most part, right? And I think what we would have to do is quantify what same range means at time of year, because they're all expanding, right? And so it just depends if their fall range, if any part of that overlaps where their summer range was, and then you could say yes, their core area still encompasses that, but it just now has expanded beyond it. But I think that it is interesting, right? Because I think we've all hunted bucks that we saw in a bean field on our family farm, or we saw in a field somewhere, or we caught on a camera in early summer or whatever, and then we ended up finding him during the rut, or we saw him during mid-October when he should have already dispersed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that there is a percentage of them that stick around. And I think the other interesting thing too, man, is like when you talk to guys like Higgins or Sturgis or Enfalt or any of these dudes who just get it done regularly, right, and kind of think like a deer.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like as they get older, and I think this might be what you're driving at, like they start to move less and less, right? Like
that's exactly, and that's why I was saying, to have it broken down into the 3 and 4 year olds, and then the 5, 6 year olds, and see how much smaller that home range gets.
Yeah, because I was just listening to something from Don, or reading something from Don the other day, where he was talking about, when you get those 3-year-olds, like they're still a little bit full of piss and vinegar, and they'll make a mistake during the rut. Like they're driven by, this is the way he put it. He's like 3-year-olds and even some 4-year-olds are still during the rut. And I'm just going to speak about the rut specifically now, but are driven by breeding. Like they're crazy for it, right? Like they're like, come hell or high water, they're going to move for the rut. They're going to move to try to find a girlfriend, right? He said, his experience has been with those deer that get up into that, some 4-year-olds, but mostly 5, 6, and 7-year-olds, and like for me, it's like in PA, it's like maybe I never see a 7-year-old, who knows? But when you get to that point, he said they are no longer during rut are they driven by breeding. They are still primarily and solely driven year-round by survival and cover.
Yeah, food and survival. Yeah.
He's like, and that's it. And then it's almost like a breeding of opportunity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's also why you'll see them. And he also is a big believer in like the biggest deer are going to move later in the rut. So like when you get to that, close to Thanksgiving time frame is when he really likes, if he hasn't got a monster on the ground yet, he's going to hunt the rut. Like that's the time he likes to hunt, because the big deer are going to move, because there's going to be fewer does that are coming into heat on that second cycle. So
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, but that would be pretty interesting. So, but speaking of, as we get prepared for the season, man, like what other things are you going through now for your process? Because I've been kind of diving deep into some like DIY modification of my gear and getting stuff set up. But what are you getting ready for this time of year outside of cams and that stuff? Are you doing any gear prep? Or are you kind of reevaluating what you're using in the timber at this point?
Well, so I switched to. I stayed with Stokerized, but I switched up my stabilizer right before turkey season, and very, very happy with the new stabilizer. I don't have any gear changes going on with the bow end of things. Everything's the same. So it's just going to be repeating.
That's good.
What I was doing there, and may have a broadhead change within G5, but it's still a 3-bladed, fixed blade. So there's nothing major that I'm really changing up on that end. Packs and tree stands. I did go through a significant change. switching from Lone Wolf over to XOP. So XOP is the official tree stand sponsor of Arrow Wild TV. And then me as an individual, I will be running a lot of XOPs, but I am also going to be running some Lone Wolf custom gear stuff. So I got a text message from Cody just earlier today, and he's like, "Hey, package coming next week."
Nice.
So super stoked about that. And he's like, "Do you want the little shorty sticks, or you want the full length sticks?" And I said, just give me the full length sticks, So that's what I'm going to be. So I'm going to be playing with that. And when I say pack stuff, with them having that locking seat, I'm going to be playing around with some different packs through Mystery Ranch and Sitka, and just kind of getting my pack set up down, how I want to be mobile, and then even go through the paces. If it's going to be long mobile, if it's going to be a situation where I plan on sitting somewhere in the morning till midday, tear down, move, and have a mobile setup for the evening. How's that going to look like? What do I want to do? And so that's going to be kind of my big
nice
summer prep outside of the timber.
Right. Nice. Yeah, a lot of my prep at this point has been, outside of the timber, outside of some of the scouting that I've done, which I've kind of tried to pace out through the winter and the spring, early summer here, just so I don't overwhelm myself with it. But a lot of what I've been doing is last year, of course, I hunted out of the saddle. This year, of course, saddle again. But my downfall last year was really my climbing situation, because I was using some long Lone Wolf sticks and they just weren't working. So I started playing around with some Wild Edge steps this year, and a nader and a swader. It's really slick, man, but it takes a little bit to get used to. And it's one of those things where I just need to practice at it, and I think it could be really cool. But what I ended up doing, and I wasn't sure I was even going to like it, but I took one of my sticks, one of my Lone Wolf sticks, and I cut them down to 17 inches and started playing around with that. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. I was like, I'm just going to cut all of them. And I was like, because I'm not going to know if I'm going to like this or not until I cut all of them and try to climb with it. I was like, so, it's if I hate it, it looks like I'm going to have to buy another set of sticks. I was like, but if I like it, then
Do you cut your 3 sticks down to 2 sticks, little stubbies?
Yeah. So basically it's like I don't make 2 out of 1. Essentially I cut it basically right below, about an inch and a half below where the second step is. So where your middle step would be.
Yeah.
But then I flip it that way. My bursa button is closer to the top stick. So I flip my pegs around and stuff like that. So it's set up the right way. So I cut 3 of them down. I left the 4th one along just because, I didn't think I really would need the 4th one. And so I started using that. I swapped out all my, straps with, am steel, rope, for rope mods. Got a splicing kit, so I'm splicing all my am steel myself, which is cool. I like doing projects like that. And then what I'm using is a 5-step aider. And so I can basically take that one stick, my first stick at the bottom, hang it as high as I can get it to where I can basically just touch the very top step of the stick and hang my aider on that, climb up it. And my first stick gets me at 7 feet. And I can basically get 7 foot per stick. So I can get 21 feet with 3 sticks and an aider now. And that cut my weight down to I think I'm at 5.5 pounds with it. And I can pack it to a small pack, so it's not bulky. So I don't have to get a bigger pack. I don't have to use a bigger pack. Or I also made a stick caddy out of some tubular webbing, some 550 cord in a small carabiner that I can kind of wrap around it, and it helps keep them tight together. I can just kind of throw them over my shoulder like a sling and around my back and carry it in. So my whole setup now with, if I carry a camera, and the gear for that, and I carry, an ozonics machine, if I choose to take it into the timber or not that day, along with all my ropes and everything, it's I'm at right at 20 pounds with my pack and everything. If I take the camera gear and stuff out,
extremely doable.
Yeah, which I'm down to 15ish pounds. If I take the camera and stuff out of my pack, I'm sub 15 pounds, I think. So for me, all the public that I hunt and everything's a hike in and stuff like that, it's working well for me. I'm pretty stoked about it. So I'm surprised you got the long sticks, man. I thought maybe you might go shorties.
No, I mean, here's my friendly jab. I just work out more.
Nice. Well played.
No, I mean, I do. I geek out and I enjoy hearing like yourself and seeing your posts and stuff about cutting the weight down. And I just like the innovation side of it.
Mhm.
I like seeing people, make change and make mods and, and with those aiders and stuff like that. Like, that's super cool. And I dig all that stuff. I just, I'll go a couple of miles off the beaten trail. But it's one of those situations for me. It seems like with the camera arm and the camera equipment, I'm lugging that stuff in already. I'm just like, screw it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's
instead of spending all the time trying to shave weight, I'm like, I'll just lift more.
yeah. The thing is too, is like for me, and I'm just going to be 100% honest. It's like, I was shitty at setting up stands. Like, and that's just the honest truth of it. It's like, I was never good at doing it super quiet. I just didn't have the patience for it. You know what I mean? So saddle hunting, and using really, really small sticks has kind of been, I can move quickly with it and I don't make nearly as much noise. And that's just for me personally, because it's like, I don't have a lot of patience and I've just never been able to hang a tree stand really well and quietly. You know what I mean? Like, I can hang a tree stand and it sits fine, but I'm damn sure probably going to make some noise, and
well, and this goes back to, when I got into hang and hunt sets, I had one of the biggest noise Nazis in the world in Todd Prignitz.
Yeah.
And, he had me, hockey tape and gaff tape, taping carabiners. Every metal buckle got taped up and with moleskin or, like I said, or hockey tape or something. And I remember the first time that I went to hang a set, thank God I had the wits about me to do a trial run, in the backyard. And I think it took me like an hour to put up 4 sticks in a stand. And I'm like, this is the dumbest thing in the world,
Yeah.
like this is never going to work. I tore it down, came back the next day and did it in like 30 minutes. And then the next day did it in like 20 minutes. And then the next day, 15 minutes. You know what I mean? It just kept getting faster and faster and faster. And then, through repetition, it kept getting quieter and quieter. But no, I'm right there with you. I mean, I guarantee you'll be in a tree faster than I will. It sounds like,
Yeah. It's pretty quick
with the less gear.
Yeah. It's pretty quick. And for me, and this is the other thing I started thinking about too, is I just started thinking about things holistically. And it's like, I'm not a tall guy, I'm like 5'9". And so when I'm carrying a full stick, it's like, it's not heavy, of course, but it's a lot of length for me to wield in the tree. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially hanging off the side of the tree or whatever. It's like, because I'm just not a tall dude in general. So if I can have something that's shorter that I can handle a lot easier, I'm going to make way less noise. And that was the first thing I noticed, where it's like, I got into the tree and I started putting sticks on and I was like, man, this is just so much easier for me to, to manage in the tree. I was like, cause it's not giving me nearly as many problems. And that was kind of the first thing that I noticed. The one other mod I think I'm going to make, because I think I am going to cut my 4th stick down as what I'm just calling like an auxiliary stick or an alternative stick. And with that one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, once I cut it down and I flip the. Is
it going to identify as a long stick or a short stick?
It will. Well, we have yet to figure that out. We're going to have to see. It might wrestle on the long stick division, but identify as a short stick. You know what I mean?
I get you.
So,
okay.
Nice. But what I'm going to do once I cut it down, I flip the pegs. The top peg, I'm actually going to buy a double step peg to put on the top of that. That way, because there's a couple spots I can hunt on my way to work, and that was one of the other reasons why I went through making some of these mods, because there's 2 properties I can hunt on the way to work, and if my gear's set up in a way that I'm quick and I'm quiet, I can probably get in and out and hunt these places, before I go to work and not have to take a bunch of stuff and not have a bunch of stuff to tear out, set up and tear down.
Yep.
So with that last stick and putting a double step on the top, I can probably actually leave my platform in the truck and not have to take it, and I'll just use that top stick as my platform and have my feet on the double step at the top. That way I'm removing the platform even yet, which is another 3 pounds, and it's one less thing I have to set up. So it's like once I get that third stick set, I'm in the tree already, which is nice. So that's what I've been up to for modding, man. I have a new bow sitting here. I have yet to set up. It's like I'm such an asshole. I got a new bow sitting there, a new sight, a new bow, and it's all sitting in my archery shop. And I've yet to set it up or shoot it or anything. So I need
or anything.
What's that?
I said, or anything. Yeah, you got to get on that, man.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I've been shooting the bow that I used last year, and it's like, and I'm used to the back tension release, shooting that well, good to go. But the new one, I just haven't had a chance to set up yet. So that'll happen. I think the weekend of the 15th, I'm gonna get that one set up and start shooting that. So we'll be set then. But so I think, man, that's kind of our deer update, dude. But we did have if you have a couple more minutes, man, we did have some folks write in for some listener Q&A we could go through if you're game.
Heck yeah, I love the Q&As, man.
I know
Q&As are awesome.
I know. I would actually do every podcast a Q&A if we could. I just think they're fun. I like to see what people ask.
So people, if you're listening, surely there's 2 or 3 people listening to this podcast.
Man, 2 might be pushing it. We probably got 1. My mom.
In totality of the week or something, but
right.
Send in some questions, send in some Q&As. I mean, oddball stuff, gear stuff, tech stuff, geeky stuff, photo, videography stuff. If you got any if it doesn't have to be just hunting, like if you have a photo question for me or a mod questions or something for Clint, we'll split them up and try to give you the best answer we can. That, or we'll bullshit our way through it.
Yeah, that or hell, we might even bring someone on who knows something one time and they can answer one.
Yeah, we might bring in like a real hunter.
Right.
You never know.
Right. So this first one was a pretty good one. It's I forget the fella's name. I forgot to write down the name. So if you're out there listening, sorry, I wish I could give you cred, but I didn't have time to write everyone's Instagram name down. This first one is, so you're in the woods. You're going in to hunt.
Yep.
Once you're in the timber, nature calls, it's a number 2.
Number 2, okay.
Do you dig a hole when you shit in the woods or not? Survey says no. John Mulligan.
Oh, the heck no. Here's the thing, man. So I'm slightly allergic to gluten and wheat, and that's usually the source of my triggers, those abrupt triggers.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm in the woods and I get that urge and I know it's not something I can hold, for me, it's more of I'm more concerned, am I going to be able to get my pants down and go, or before I just soil my drawers? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yep. So, no, I am not taking the time to dig a hole. I am straight plopping right on whatever surface is right there, man. I don't screw around with that.
Now, are you a tree grabber, or are you usually trying to find a log to sling your cheeks
dude, I just air squat it.
Air squat it? Nice. All right. Freestyle.
I just air squat it and go and just try not to hit my heels.
Yeah, freestyle. I like it. It's what we call it where I'm from. We call that freestyling. It's good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, this is the honest to God's truth. I'll do number 2 in the timber every time I hunt, without fail. The honest truth is, like, one of my biggest stresses the morning or the day that I'm going to hunt is whether or not I'm going to have a chance to poop before I leave. So and just to add real fast, I get up a little extra early, mm-hmm.
So I can make every effort to get that out of the way before I leave to head into the timber. But go ahead.
Yeah. I get up a little extra early too, and I pound my coffee and try to make it happen. I'll eventually, during the course of the hunting season, it's like, your clock gets reset, and it's like, then I'll start going in the morning when I get up. But at the beginning of the season, it's like, it drives me crazy. But Chad used to make fun of me because every day when we were hunting in Ohio, like, it became a thing where he was like, do it again? But like, yep. I don't even make it from the truck, dude. I get out of the truck, the fresh air hits me, and I get so, like, pumped up and excited. I get butterflies. So I'm about to go hunt and get in a tree.
Yep.
That I got to go immediately. And I don't dig a hole. I'm not a hole digger. I'll air squat if necessary. I typically don't like to lean up against trees because, you might lean up against one that has some like poison growing up the side of it or whatever. But what I'm a big fan of, and this started actually in Montana because I crapped in the woods every day for 2 weeks in Montana, is grabbing the truck tire. And that's my favorite. Like, just grab the truck tire, lean back, get a little back pressure on it, dude. That's a clean one. Yeah.
Work pretty good.
Works awesome.
You see, and, and again, if I've got the urge to go out in the woods, it's not a brick. It's soft serve at best.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
there's never a clean one.
No. And good friend of mine, Tom Petrie over at Become One. I don't know. It started sometime around Harrisburg, and the conversation evolved, and how we got onto the poop conversation, I don't know. But it's ongoing, and we still text back and forth about it. But I'm way more upset if I waste a good shower.
Yeah.
It never fails. You take a shower and then you got to go take a deuce.
Yep.
I'm more upset about wasting the shower than I am having to poop in the woods.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've come to enjoy pooping in the woods. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Kind of like it.
Dude, animals poop in the woods.
Yeah.
I'll argue that with anybody. People are like, "Oh, you can't pee in the woods." Really? Other animals don't pee in the woods.
So here's a little story about pooping in the woods. So the deer I killed 2 years ago, going on, it'll be 3 years, I guess, this fall in Ohio. I got in my tree early in the morning, was getting set up, was getting ready to climb in, and it hit me. And I was like, man, I got to go. And it was what you were talking about, where it was like, there wasn't going to be any opportunity.
I don't go now. I got problems.
Yeah, it was like there wasn't going to be any opportunity to like assess where I'm going to go. It's exactly what you said, where it's like I'm going to have problems where it's like I'm going to go in my pants, and then I'm going to be going back to camp to try to get cleaned up, which means I'm going to burn half a day, or at least the morning, cleaning myself up. So I ran down just below my stand, probably like 30 yards, maybe. You know what I mean? And that was all the further I can make, because I was like, I just need to try to get as far away as I can. And that was all I could make it. Boom, sat down, did it right there. That was at like, whatever, right before, however long before daylight, right? Half hour before daylight, whatever it is. I shot that deer no further than like 10 yards from that pile of poop at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's like, like he didn't seem to have a problem with it. So I'm a firm believer. Like I wouldn't say, you want to have like baby wipes out there with you or anything, you know what I mean? Like scented baby wipes, probably not a good move, right? But if you're going au naturel and maybe you're using some leaves as your toiletry, I think you're probably pretty safe. I think
you're fine.
Yeah, it's my take.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. And for me, like, and this is like a note to anybody: if I'm ever around somebody at a restaurant or we're at a bar, and I just like phantom, and without saying anything to anybody, there's an 85% chance I'm going to go poop.
Yep.
I'll be right back. I'm a fast one. I'm not one of those like, I got to go and squat for, 2 hours.
Read the paper.
It's because when I got to go, I got to go now.
It's
like
happening
right now.
So
I've pooped on the side of the road 5 miles from my house so many times it's not even funny.
I
can't make it home.
I think I saw the monument.
And there's people that have those phobias, like I can't poop anywhere unless I'm at my house. I can't poop in public restroom, or I can't poop in the woods. Dude, I literally can poop with people watching me. I don't care.
Yeah, dude, I've used the train station bathroom in Philly. Like I'm good. It's like it's not a problem.
You're like, there's a hobo like laying down right next to me. I don't even care. I gotta go.
I'm like, hey man, you.
Like, for me, it's the alternative. It's poop now, or like, dude, I'm a grown ass man. I don't want to shit myself, but
I don't think anybody.
That's the alternative.
I don't think anybody wants to. It's like
no.
Nice. Well, I think we sufficiently covered the
that one's answered.
That one's answered. Yeah. So the answer is no. We don't dig a hole. We go wherever we please.
Heck no.
So the next one is we're going to get into some deer related stuff now that we grossed everyone out sufficiently. This next one is a new piece of property. So you got a new piece, public or private. It's just for the purpose of this conversation. Let's just assume it's a piece of public. It says, screw it. It could be either or. We'll go either or, public or private. Do you believe trail camera placement or boots on the ground scouting is better? So yeah, I think what he's asking is like, you got a new piece, do you feel like you're going to get more out of it, or do you learn more, or are you building your strategy more based off your trail camera placements or by actually walking the piece? And I'll let you take this one first.
Okay. For me, it is going to be bed dependent.
Yeah.
Yeah, the closer I get to bed, the more camera and less boot I want.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's early, like summer, that kind of stuff. But let's just call it we're getting close to hunting season or we're in hunting season. I like more camera scouting than boot scouting, without a doubt.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's dependent. Me too. Like, I think the correct answer is really both. Right. I think you want to use both to their advantages. To your point. Earlier in the year, boots on the ground is probably optimal because it's going to let you understand, like, when you're looking at topo and stuff like that. That's the other thing I would add in too. It's like, don't discount looking at maps first, because you'll figure out a lot by just looking at maps and probably save yourself a lot of time. Sure. But I think, yes, it's dependent. I definitely spend more time in the early part of the year, putting boots to the ground, especially if it's a brand new piece, because I want to figure out what the terrain does. I want to see for myself, like, where old sign has been, are there old monster rubs in there that I need to pay attention to? Is there a little oak flat or something that I'm not going to know otherwise, to know that maybe, hey, that's going to be a good spot during pre-rut, whenever they're just when they go quote unquote nocturnal, the lull, when they're changing food sources. But I think, but cameras definitely have a place, and I think, to your point, I think as you get closer to bed, it's, I think it becomes paramount to use cameras, especially if you've put boots on the ground and you've learned a little bit about the property. Then I think the cameras become really, really important because it allows you to be, non-obtrusive on the piece overall. The other caveat that I would add too is, how close are you to this piece, right? Because to me, that plays a lot into it, to where it's like, for example, for me, the family property we have back home, like, I put boots on the ground on it, the first year we got it in the spring and the summer a little bit, but I lived 3.5 hours from it. So I didn't hunt it the first year. I hung cameras on it, and I just watched cameras for the first year and really didn't do much after that, until the following winter. And then I went and really put a good scout on it. It really took me to this year to where I started figuring stuff out, so it was like 2 years of like watching cameras and having very limited time to put boots on the ground. So it's like, yeah, if you live a fur piece from wherever you're trying to hunt, because this happens to me with another good example is Iowa, right? Like, I came out, I put boots on the ground for like 3 days with you, and otherwise now it's like I'm going to have to rely on cameras. And I mean, I have an ace in the hole because you're familiar with these pieces, so it's like,
the location of that new property is key. I mean, and the closer I get to bed, when it's boots on the ground, I want it to be my hunting boots on the ground.
Yeah.
And from a scouting perspective, I'm right there with you. And I kind of left that part out. I would rather have more camera than boots on the ground, but the guaranteed part of it is the prep of looking at topos and trying to study the terrain as much as I can. I definitely studied way more terrain on a new piece than I do an old piece,
Yeah. And I think too, if it's a new piece, like my other, I think, advice would be, and I'm going to steal a page from Cody here, which is like, you don't know shit about this piece really. So like, I would worry less about putting cameras up and worrying about bumping deer. And I would worry more about getting in there and finding where they're at, making some mistakes.
Yep.
That way you're set up for success the following year. Cause let's be honest, it's like, just going to call it what it is. Unless you're a hell of a hunter or you got really lucky, you're probably going to struggle on that piece the first year. Or unless you're
first year, maybe even two.
Yeah, unless you're just one of these dudes who has a lot of time off that you can hunt almost every day. And I know I have buddies like that, right?
And a horseshoe up their ass.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, we all have buddies, like a guy like like an end fault or whatever, the guy hunts like almost every day, or like the hunting public guys that hunt every day. It's like, yeah, if you can be in the timber every day, you know what I mean, and learn on the fly, then sure, you know what I mean. But if you're a normal dude and you're going to get a week for rut and you're going to hunt weekends and you're going to pick a day here and there during the course of the season to take a day off from work, it's like, yeah, you're probably just going to want to pound it and make some mistakes and figure the property out and figure out where deer are bedded and figure out where bucks, are spending their time during the different times of year. And then probably the next year, cameras will probably serve you better. That's kind of my thought. Anything else to add to that, or do you think we covered that one?
No, I agree. And, and it's funny because you and I have talked about tactics and aggression and or being aggressive and stuff like that. Aggression describes me late season when I'm getting pissed. But no, being aggressive with the tactics. No, and it's funny because, the more and more I talk to Cody about stuff, I mean, it goes hand in hand with how, I've been saying that I want to be a little bit more aggressive, and I probably bumped more deer in years past, just simply not knowing better. But I also located more deer.
Yeah.
In years past. So there's something to be said about getting in there, and you can. A trail camera is going to give you deer, but a trail camera is not going to take a picture of rubs, sign, scrapes, trails. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, I think it's
not going to pick up that sign, so to speak. So there's something to be said for boots on the ground. I mean, no doubt.
Yeah. I was just going to add one other thing, is just like going back to what I was saying, which is that first year, it's like make the mistakes and get on the piece, because the other thing that you don't quite know until you're there and doing it is like, you can look at wind direction all you want, but until you start to climb up trees and sit those spots with a west wind and see if it actually blows, that it actually blows true west for you, when you're in the tree, like that's something you don't know until you start sitting in stands, right? And unless your plan is to go wind map the property during the off season to know that when you get a west wind, it actually is a southwest on this knoll, and on this knoll, your west wind is actually a northwest wind. You know what I mean? Like, so there's all those things that, you don't know until you go do it. And so I think that it would just be, don't treat it with kid gloves. Go in and beat it up a little bit. You're not going to run the deer into the next county. It's not going to happen. They'll be back.
They'll come back.
Yeah. But go in with it with the right expectations and the right goals in mind. And the goal should really be like, this first year, if I kill something, that would be awesome, and I'm going to try to, but I should really walk out of this piece knowing the property, right? Unless you can hunt every day, then it's a different story. But if you're a normal dude, like, try to kill something, but learn the piece, so you have, more success later. So, all right. So next one is, this one actually pertains to me, because I actually have this situation in two pieces actually this year. So it says, what would you do if your only morning access was to walk through an open field? So I'll take a stab. I'll take a stab at this one first, and then pass it over to you. So for me, and I know you have this too, because I know I've seen the property that you hunt and stuff like that. So I'm curious in what you say as well. So for me, I've battled this most of bow hunting, just because, especially back home farmland, it was a lot of the one property was just set up. Well, it wasn't set up to hunt, number one, and it was just laid out in a way that was really, really challenging to access. One of the things that I started doing, and I'll probably deploy this year, I think first you have to understand, he's saying here that it's, your only morning access is, I think first, before you consider that, is like, understand whether or not it's actually going to be successful or not in the morning. Because if your only access into this property is through the field, and you're going to blow deer out and alert everything on the property that you're coming, then it's not a morning spot. And so then I would figure out ways, like, can I slip in there mid-afternoon when the fields are empty and get into a spot that I need to get into to try to have a successful hunt. So I think that's the first thing, is like, if it is crappy access for morning, then I probably wouldn't hunt mornings. The other option is I started playing around with this in the swamp a little bit, and I'm going to adopt it probably for these two properties, is I started going in like late morning. So I'd wait till the sun came up to where deer had already kind of been through their gray light and they've been back to bed and stuff like that, and kind of came in after them, behind them. That way, I wasn't meeting them as they were trying to get back to bed. That would be the other kind of the other way that I would approach it. The other alternative is try to. I mean, I'm assuming this property is probably not like buoyed by water on every side, so I would start talking to neighbors, any of the adjacent properties, and see if you can possibly use their properties as access to help you out if it's completely off limits. Other than that, I think you have to get a little bit creative and maybe use ATVs or trucks to get in and out of there and have someone drop you off. That way the deer get moved off the field with a vehicle versus a human. It seems like some folks, I've never really had success with that, but I have heard where some folks have had success with that just because they were used to farm equipment and stuff like that. So the motor didn't really bother them too much, and they didn't really, spook them off to ruin the hunt necessarily, and then have someone come pick you back up. Those are the kind of handful of ways that I would think about, but I think field access is always one of the toughest, and it's one of the things that I think screw probably more hunters than they want to admit. So what are your thoughts, John?
100% agree. I mean, so many of the farms here in Iowa are laid out where you got road frontage across the farm, and trees basically are the perimeter of the property line, and it's tillable ground in the dead center.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't get, I would say try to get permission from a neighboring farm. See if he'll give you permission just to cut through his field or cut through his timber or something, if possible. If that's not an option, it may not be a morning property.
Mm-hmm.
It just simply might not be the best way. Don Higgins is really, really good about planting Egyptian wheat, milo, and sorghum, corn, and creating like a maze. Mm-hmm. And it gives himself a wall. I've seen it firsthand on his property where he's got ways that he's got paths cut in where he can cut down through a field and the deer never even see him slipping into it. That's an option. I love the idea of getting the deer accustomed to quads, have somebody drop you off, and then he keeps on driving,
Mm-hmm.
Deer, it's amazing how accustomed they get to quads and tractors and trucks and, that kind of stuff. I've used those tactics in the past with vehicles, and it's worked out pretty decent. I know buddies that have used it, and it's worked, really well for them as well. But, either get in a little bit earlier. Maybe you have to sit for an hour and a half in the dark.
Right.
That's a possibility. Stay away from the full moon nights where they're going to be a little more active in the evening, to where you're blowing them out of that open field. Walk as close as you can to the edge of the timber instead of being out in the middle of the field. Maybe they're less likely to see you. Take your time, walk slower. There's a couple of different tactics that I've tried to use myself. But a lot of my properties have a big open field in the dead center.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard, man. There's a couple of different ways to skin the cat, and it's like I don't think any of them are necessarily foolproof. I like the one that you mentioned, and this is just to reiterate it, because it's always something on one of our properties. It's like I would like to do at some point if I could ever get the time to do it and really kind of map it out to where it's going to be most effective. But what you mentioned about Don, like planting screening cover, if this is a property that you own or that you lease,
Mm-hmm.
if you can plant, it's like that's probably your best bet, right? Is just to plant yourself a screen to get in. That stuff is, and of course you still have to play the wind. I think that's the one thing we left out, but I think it goes without saying. It's like you don't want don't want the wind blowing in the deer's favor at that point. So I think those are the things you can possibly try, but I mean, there's no way around it. Accessing through a field is tough, especially for morning hunts. So, The next one here is our best strategy. What's our go-to strategy? And we can probably expand beyond one strategy for hunting public land during the rut. And I'll let you I'll let you kick this one off there, Utah.
Hunting public land in the rut.
Yeah.
So I'm going on sign at that point. I'm going on draws and ridges.
Mm-hmm.
That's if I'm going in blind, that's what I'm going for.
Yeah.
Places where I think the big bucks might get up, late morning, midday, and they're scent checking downwind of doe bedding areas.
Yep.
Those are going to be the spots that I'm going on public.
Yep.
And going where other people aren't.
Yeah. I think that's the first thing for me, or at least it has been in the past, is just trying to find a chunk of ground that is going to be out of the way or overlooked or maybe hard to access or whatever, right? I think is the first thing to kind of do. It's, look at a map. Again, not to harp on it, but go back to an aerial map and look to see where the parking lots are, and anything that's within, quarter mile of the parking lot, you might as well mark it off, kill it, unless it's just a place that's overlooked, and you won't know that unless you put some boots on the ground and see if there's any sign left from years past and stuff like that.
Yeah.
One thing that I found that's worked well for me, particularly in Ohio, hunting public, is trying to find, if this one particular piece, it's like I've had the opportunity to hunt a couple different years, so I've gotten more and more familiar with it, and I've more started trying to position myself, less concerned about where the big bucks are possibly living, quote unquote, at that point. I'm going to play the odds and kind of set myself up near doe bedding on the downwind side, or the particular piece that I hunted this past year. I've actually set myself up in between two pieces of doe bedding, so I'm getting the traffic that's going back and forth between doe bedding, checking each doe bedding area. To me, that's kind of the best bet. And this is actually related to an earlier question about the cameras versus boots on the ground. One of the things that I've picked up, and I've mentioned it in the past on a podcast, is that, these doe families pass their breeding dates on to their doe fawns. So that whole family is going to come in year after year after year after year within the same 24-hour window, essentially, into breeding. And so if you can run cameras on public and start to see when the activity in a given area really picks up, especially if you're hanging cameras during the rut close to doe bedding, you can start to figure out what week, almost down to what 2 or 3 days, that part of the timber is going to turn on for you. And so once you start to figure that out, you can start to jump from doe bedding to doe bedding based on when you know that they're going to come in. Now, the icing on the cake is I have a pretty sweet spot in Ohio where it's I know I'm in between two pieces of doe bedding, and I know the hot time is between the 5th and the 8th. That's the hot time. And it plays out just about every year the same way. And so for me, that's, what I'm kind of trying to find and focus on. But that takes some time and some years of hanging cameras and watching cameras so you can figure out what time certain ridges turn on with that doe family. This ridge turns on this time. This ridge turns on at this time. But if you really want to optimize your public land hunts, start to figure out when that happens, if you have the time to. If you're going out for a 2-week hunt or a week hunt or whatever, then, I think, John, stuff that you mentioned, which is find those funnels, read hot sign, and, find the hottest sign you can possibly find and set up on it. But I think the kick in the balls during that time of the year is that, it's hard to tell what a deer is going to do that time of year when he's looking for a girlfriend, so it's probably more about putting yourself in those pinch points, that are going to pinch deer down during, in areas that are heavily traveled. So anything else to add to that one?
No, pretty much got that covered.
Cool. Last question. Okay. And this one, actually, I know who this one's from. He's a good dude. I've been meaning to have him on the show. We need to have him on sometime. But this one is from the whitetail drifter. And I think you're familiar with the drifter. Yeah. Good dude. We got to have him on the show sometime. He's good people. But he asks. Yeah,
and actually, speaking of end of June, I think he's actually going to come down and hang some cameras.
Nice.
In and around some shimmick parcels as well.
Nice.
He actually might hook up, or him and we might hook up together and hang some cameras around the end of June.
Yeah, Connor's good people. Then we definitely have to have him on here soon and chat with him.
Yep.
Yeah, but he asked what goals and expectations for your sits in Iowa this fall. So
there you go.
Yeah, so I guess I'll kick this one off and toss it to you. So I think for me, I think I mentioned this when we were talking, when we actually recorded the podcast out, whenever I was out with you, is that, you know, I'm coming out to Iowa to have a good time and have an experience. I want to kill a deer, a nice deer badly. Um, but I'm not going to hold out for a 170-inch wall hanger. That's just not, you know, for,
Good. Yep.
yeah, for me, that's not necessarily what it's, isn't necessarily the goal. If one comes by, would I like to stick an arrow in it? Sure. I'm not going to not. But I think my goal, if we're going in terms of animal caliber or whatever, I would like to shoot a 4-year-old or older. You know what I mean? Because Iowa has them. You know what I mean? So that would be awesome. I would like to shoot something that I wouldn't necessarily be able to kill regularly in Pennsylvania. You know what I mean? So it's like my breaking point would probably be, I see a 140-inch deer, it's probably going to get an arrow. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of like the criteria for me. But more than anything, I think what I want to see is, I'm really looking forward to being in a state that has killer deer, killer habitat, sex ratios are balanced, and so the rut kicks off and happens. You know what I mean? And see deer do deer things and stuff like that aren't, under a severe amount of pressure and stuff like that. Because, PA has a ton of pressure. Even the public that hunt in Ohio, it's not as pressured as Pennsylvania, but it still has some, fair amount of pressure on it. And the hunting numbers just in Ohio, as far as like pressure is concerned, is just so much lower. It's like hunting public land in Iowa is better than hunting most private land in Pennsylvania in a lot of cases, from a pressure standpoint. So I'm just looking forward to kind of seeing things play out naturally, because I've got a little taste of that in Ohio at times, and it's super cool. And I can just only imagine that with the reduced pressure and the amount of freedom that the deer have in Iowa, that my imagination kind of hopes that that'll be even more ratcheted up while I'm in the in Iowa. So that's really what my goal is. I want to see cool stuff, and I'm hoping to kill a nice deer that I wouldn't otherwise be able to kill regularly in Pennsylvania, and hang out with some buddies, man. That's really the name of the game.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Those are all great goals.
Yeah, man. Trying to keep it real, man. So how about you, man? What's your goal? And we'll do a deeper dive, goal oriented show here as we get closer to the season to talk more specifically about our goals. But since we're talking about the Iowa session, we'll get your high level goals as well.
Yeah. Well, so this will be my second year running, doing a food plot on the lease. So, really like the deer management side of things. I kind of, I do both. I do both worlds. I have the lease, so I like the deer management, but I really enjoy public land hunting as well. So, on the public land side, it is to continue to scout and learn more ground, cover more areas, around the Shimmick public land, and then on the private land side of things, it's continue to learn that property more. Adapt the food plots and, learn how the deer utilize that property with the different food sources and stuff like that. So those are my two big goals this year. It goes without saying, sure, I hope to harvest, a mature buck this year. But if, that'll just be the cherry on top if I can accomplish the other two primary goals,
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah. And it goes without saying, I'm anxious. I'm looking forward to you coming out and seeing what Iowa has to offer, and hopefully you get the same feeling I did, that even that first year I'm just like, wow, that's a solid 4-year-old buck, and I'm letting him walk.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It's funny. It's funny when you and I talk, man, because I sometimes think, I'm like, I get off the phone and I'm like, I think John might be more excited for me to come to Iowa than I might be yet.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's so neat, man. I mean, that first fall, the first time I saw a 3-year-old walk by that was bigger than any 4 or 5-year-old I'd seen in Kentucky. Body wise, it's a neat area, and It's a cool spot. It's not as pressured, as a lot of other states and a lot of other areas in the country, and so that part's cool. And like I mentioned earlier, this will be the first season ever in my hunting life where I'm not going to have that 9 to 5. I mean,
yeah.
Every year I've been in Iowa, I can't even tell you how many times that I'd get a phone call, and it'd be a conference call on a supposed vacation day or whatever. And I'm looking forward to that.
Right. Yeah. Hear that. I think for me too, goal of all goals would be that I would tag out very early in my trip, because I've got 2 weeks planned to be out there with you. Would be to tag out early to where you and I would actually get a chance to do a little hunting together and a little filming together. So my hope is that like one of us tags out early to where we can film with the other one and do some stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That'd be solid.
And my hope of all hopes is that we both tag out within like the first couple of days, and we can like throw a few back, have a good time, and just tell stories around the deer while we're skinning them out, and just have that whole camp experience. You know what I mean? Like that would be that would be super rad. But. So I think we answered all.
That would be awesome.
That would be awesome, man. That's actually, if I could go back and just do revisionist history here real quick, that would actually be the goal. We both kill something. We both get to hang out in the skinning shed, drinking beers, skinning deer, telling stories. That's
there. You go.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I think that's a good note to end on. Is there anything that we missed? Or are we good? Or did we cover everything?
I think we got it, man. I think we got everything up to date with what's going on. Shameless plug. Johnny Utah Creative is up and running. Staying really, really busy on the photo side of things, and expanding. I've done everything now from senior photos to baseball team pics to
fire pics,
more product lifestyle pics for brands, and doing some product design work out in Montana with a company out there, and it's just it's been awesome. It's been really, really cool. There's a lot of cool things that are starting to evolve, and the connections are paying off. Apparently being a good person, like being honest, like with companies and doing exactly what you say you're going to do, it actually does pay off in the long run.
That is nice. Who would have thunk it?
Who would have thunk? Yeah.
Nice.
You don't have to have 1 million followers. As long as you do what you say you're going to do and you don't rip people off.
Right.
Amazing how it actually does come back around.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, with that, we will close this jam down. I'm actually going to get ready to pass out and probably have sweet dreams of Iowa in my head now. So
there you go.
I'll talk to you soon, buddy.
All right, man. Sounds good.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. And if you have not yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating. And before we shut this thing down, I want to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tether, Exodus Outdoor Gear, Skull Brew Coffee Company, Obsession Bows, Ramcat Broadheads, Trophy Taker Rests, and Dead Downwind. And until next time, we'll see y'all.
Makes me steal. I could show you through the door. I ain't welcome anymore. A long time coming, if it all